Forbidden strings? Emily's mornings were filled with the gentle sound of Nate's guitar, but behind the music lay an unsettling tension. Living with her stepson, she found herself torn between her role as a mother figure and an inexplicable attraction growing between them. One afternoon, while alone in the house, Luca offered her a refreshing lemonade and asked, "Do you want to listen to some music?" His smile made her heart skip a beat. As they shared a rare, intimate moment, her voice trembling as she joined his song, their eyes locked in a way she couldn't ignore. Later, during a routine evening, an unexpected encounter in the bathroom changed everything. With tension thick in the air, Nate confronted Emily, their emotions raw and unfiltered. His words hit her like a storm. "Why don't we talk like we used to? It feels like we're avoiding what's really going on." Welcome to Silent Confessions, a space where unspoken thoughts and hidden emotions come to life. Here we dive deep into the complexities of the human heart, exploring the stories that often remain in the shadows. It's a sanctuary for those who felt unheard, misunderstood, or caught in the tangled web of their own emotions. Whether it's love, loss, betrayal, or moments of unexpected connection, Silent Confessions uncovers the layers of human experience in a way that's raw, intimate, and profoundly relatable. This is more than a channel. It's a journey into the untold, where every confession finds a voice and every story reminds us that we're never truly alone. Subscribe now and join us in unraveling the silent stories that deserve to be heard. Emily woke to the tender pull of guitar strings drifting from Nate's room each morning, a melody that seeped into her skin and lured her into uneasy intrigue. Her 22-year-old stepson wasn't merely a musician, he was a presence. Bold, confident, and heartbreakingly beautiful. Each moment she spent around him felt like the start of something deliciously forbidden. The music was intoxicating, but it was Nate's hands that mesmerized her. Every deliberate motion over the strings spoke of control and intimacy, feeding her forbidden fantasies. She sat in her room, her marriage to Matt feeling more like an obligation than a connection. Every melody that danced from Nate's guitar offered Emily an escape into a world rich with possibilities, where restraint and consequence didn't exist. And every morning her heart betrayed her, thudding in protest against the boundaries she was supposed to keep. One radiant afternoon, golden light splashed across the kitchen as Emily sliced lemons, their tart aroma filling the warm air. Nate's distinct stride echoed down the hallway, and her hand paused mid-motion. He entered the room with effortless poise, his tight tank top hugging his sculpted torso. The low hang of his ripped jeans revealed glimpses of sinewy strength beneath. His piercing green eyes met hers, locking them in a space that felt electric. "Want to hear a song I wrote?" he asked, his voice carrying a sensual cadence that made her pulse quicken. His movements were deliberate as he reached for a glass of water, his bicep flexing faintly as the sunlight kissed his skin. Emily felt the moment stretch, her breathing shallow as she nodded, a single word escaping her lips. "Sure." He barely suppressed a playful smirk and moved toward the couch, guitar in hand. The slow, deliberate way he cradled the instrument sent shivers coursing through her. The notes he strummed were haunting, tender, and intimate, far more than music. Dinner that evening was a haze of half-heard words and stolen glances. Emily could barely focus on Matt's predictable conversations, too consumed by the weight of Nate's eyes brushing past her. The tension simmered just beneath the surface, growing with each accidental brush of their arms and every daringly prolonged gaze. Later, seeking solace, Emily fled to the bathroom, her sanctuary for fleeting moments of clarity. She slipped out of her dress, one delicate movement at a time. The golden glow from the bathroom light warmed her bare skin, casting tantalizing shadows across her curves. Lowering herself into the water, she sighed, the warmth soothing her body. But peace was transient. The door creaked open, and Emily froze. Nate stood there, silhouetted in the soft glow, his eyes immediately locking onto hers. Surprise flickered across his features, followed by something darker, more primal. He didn't leave, didn't apologize. He lingered, his lips parting slightly in hesitation. "Sorry, I didn't know you were here," he murmured. His voice carried something deeper than embarrassment. The air grew heavy between them. "It's fine," Emily breathed, her voice breaking softly as their eyes met again. Her body reacted immediately, heat rushing to her cheeks and elsewhere. Nate took a step closer, slow, measured, like a predator testing its prey. Emily's heart thundered, her resolve shaking. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered, voice rough and raw. "I tried to stay away, I tried to fight it, but I can't." His gaze dropped, not to her body, but to the vulnerable way her shoulders curved forward. "I need you." His confession was the spark, igniting the tension that had simmered between them for weeks. Emily's rational defenses screamed at her to reject him, but her body betrayed her, leaning involuntarily toward the magnetic pull of his presence. Nate's fingers grazed her wrist, firm yet hesitant, sending shocks radiating through her as if his touch held promises untold. She didn't speak, couldn't. His thumb brushed against her skin in slow circles, tethering her to the moment, making everything else disappear. Her pulse hammered wildly as he leaned in, his breath warm against the curve of her neck. The first brush of his lips was featherlight, almost imperceptible, but it set fire to her veins. His kisses grew bolder, trailing down her neck and pausing at her collarbone. Emily gasped softly, her body arching toward him in surrender. Her mind screamed for restraint, but there was no space for rationality in the electric intimacy of his touch. Her fingers tangled in his hair almost instinctively, pulling him closer. Nate's lips pressed firmer now, their urgency mirrored in hers. The cool porcelain of the tub anchored the heat of their bodies as the world dissolved around them, leaving only the shared rhythm of their breaths and the unspoken vow to abandon the rules they'd clung to for far too long. By the time Matt came home that night, Emily could barely compose herself. Her skin tingled with memory, every nerve wired to recognize the phantom touch of Nate's hands. His piercing green eyes lingered in her thoughts, and the heady fervor of their stolen embrace echoed in her heartbeat. But nothing ended there. The fire between them wasn't easily extinguished. It was fed by every shared glance at the dinner table, every innocent moment that suddenly felt too charged to ignore. Emily became hyper-aware of Nate's movements around the house, and it seemed he was no different. Their hands brushed too often, lingering in ways they never had before. Longing simmered beneath the surface of polite family breakfasts, the carefully controlled tension a razor edge between desire and exposure. Try as she might, Emily couldn't avoid him. Whenever Nate stepped into a room, it was as though the air itself thickened, laced with the intimacy of their shared secrets. There was no retreat now, no space left to cling to the rules they'd shattered in that fleeting yet eternal moment in the bathroom. Unchecked desire began to spill into quiet corners, secret touches disguised as necessary movements, stolen moments in the spaces between routine tasks. One evening, as Matt dozed on the couch, Nate and Emily found themselves alone in the darkened living room. The flicker from the television screen seemed like a distant distraction compared to the gravitational pull growing between them. Nate sat dangerously close to her, his hand brushing hers on the armrest. The simple contact was enough to erase the noise of the outside world once again. "I can't stand this anymore," Nate murmured, his voice weighted with frustration and longing. Waiting, pretending like this doesn't exist, like we don't exist. Emily trembled under the intensity of his words, yet in his gaze she saw her own desires mirrored. Their want, their need, was no longer a vague suggestion but a blaring truth neither could ignore. She leaned in first this time, abandoning the futile war within herself. Their lips met again, but it was different this time. More assured, more desperate. Nate pulled her closer, and Emily let herself be consumed, their passion marked by the undeniable thrill of crossing a line they knew could not be uncrossed. This time there were no doubts, no apologies, only the inevitability of a love they could no longer deny. For better or worse, they had claimed each other, and in that claim, lost the parts of themselves that had ever believed they could stay apart. Their affair was no longer a choice, it had become their destiny. Thank you for joining us here on Silent Confessions, where we uncover the truths that often go unspoken. If this story resonated with you or sparked thoughts of your own, we'd love to hear from you. Share your feelings or experiences in the comments below because your voice matters here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a moment of connection with the untold stories we share. Until next time, remember, every silent confession deserves to be heard. See you soon.